Hey everyone, welcome back to the Independent Reporter, and today we're just going to be looking at Donald Trump's foreign policies. There's not too much to talk about here because, well, he's only ever mentioned three things, and it seems like they're all essentially the same thing. Muslims, 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 ISIS. Ugh. But
Yeah.
we'll be talking about three main issues today. Essentially, the only ones we've ever been able to find up. First, we'll talk about the trade deals, which he has completely claimed that all of them are bad, and he'll only make good ones. Which coincidentally, none of them are good. And then we'll be talking about his foreign policy towards ISIS, and then finally we'll end on immigration because immigration is mainly a feeling-based thing with Donald Trump, not so much on facts, but. Yeah, so basically, to sum up the trade negotiations and things, Donald Trump in the past has pretty much slammed every single trade deal or, you know, deal that the United States government has ever signed. Notably, the Iranian deal, slammed that, said he'll tear it up on the first day. NAFTA, something that didn't get criticism ever before him, so I guess you can call him, innovative on hating on NAFTA. Also against TPP, which is the new fad in the United States politics system, which personally I believe is gonna, fade away come the election. Um, and various other deals that have been proposed, like free trade agreements, tearing up pretty much all of them, saying they're bad, and that's it.
But he's never offered his own views on trade. He's never offered his own trade deals. He's always said, I'm going to make good trade deals, and I'm going to get rid of the bad ones. But every trade deal that's in place, and every deal that's in place, the Iranian deal, NAFTA, TPP, they're all bad. But he's never put forward his own deal that says, this is what I want to do. And he's not for free trade, but he's obviously not against free trade. He's not He's not showing us anything. He's just kind of saying stuff. He's just a lot of filler and a lot of content.
Yeah,
Eh,
like to me, the biggest piece of that would have been the Iranian deal, because everyone shot it
Yeah,
down. People like John Kasich said, it's not the best deal, but I'll stick with it. But I would change this, this, this. Or I think even Ted Cruz had like, I hate it, I'll tear it up. We should do this, this, this. But Donald Trump's is, I hate it, we should tear it up. It's un-American. Thank you, and then end speech.
yeah. Most Republicans are against the Iranian trade deal, and most Republicans were against the Iranian trade deal before they do anything about it.
Hmm.
Not trade deal, but the whole Iranian anti-embargo thing. But that's just kind of what he's going off of everything. He's not everything he says is negative. He's always attacking things he doesn't like. He's attacking the Iranian trade deal because he doesn't like it, but he's not saying why he doesn't like it. He's just saying it's a bad deal. Because I honestly don't know. He's just attacking things to attack things.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to admit, there's like some part of it that um, he's the one of the first people to do this. I mean, you also got to look at Bernie Sanders for doing stuff like this, getting rid of bad trade deals. Noticeably, the TPP, he was one of the first people to jump on that. Sanders isn't against all trade deals, but he's against quite a bit of them. But Trump also, on the Republican side, he is kind of like a leader in terms of the I hate all the trade deals. But like the thing I find interesting is his refusal to accept anything good about NAFTA. Now, right now, NAFTA, I'll be honest, it's probably not the best for the United States because the United States is by far the strongest economy in North America, well, out of the three nations, like monumentally ahead of Canada and Mexico. So of course, it's beneficial to Canada and Mexico to have NAFTA. But 5, 6, 7 years ago, I can't remember how long it was, when the Canadian dollar was at like 140 American. I mean, the oil deal before fracking and all that stuff. That was like when the barrel of oil normally was about the same as a tar sands barrel, except you didn't need to pay any tax on that, and the Americans were pretty much importing almost exclusively from Canada. That benefited a lot. You didn't see soaring gas prices back then either. So, I mean, NAFTA really helps when the United States goes through lulls, but I mean, it's not really hurting them right now, and this is, quote unquote, the worst time for them.
And let's be honest here. If he repeals NAFTA, we're still gonna have to have a trade agreement with Canada. Canada is too important to the United States economy, and the United States is too important to the Canadian economy. There's gonna be a trade deal somewhere in there. Now, he's obviously going to try to use NAFTA. If he repeals NAFTA, he's going to still try to put it on Mexico. He's going to try to use it for influence. He's against immigration from Mexico. Obviously, that's why he began his entire campaign, according to him. But he's going to use this for influence to try to force them to, I guess, pay for the wall. But they're not going to pay for the wall. Let's be honest here. I really don't know why he wants to repeal NAFTA. There's a lot of pros to it, and I believe those pros outweigh its cons. It's just
Yeah,
I don't
like
know.
it's one of those classic things. I mean, you can always sit there and say, when your country signs a free trade agreement, and by the way, when I say your country, I mean something in Europe or North America, with a country, say Australia, you know, you kind of scratch your head saying, yeah, well, I get they're an advanced economy, but they're so far away. Do we really need to be importing stuff from that far away? Or maybe India or Africa, some places in those areas. You just don't really understand why you make those deals. But when it's the country beside you, like if I were to say, New Zealand and Australia have free trade deals with each other, you wouldn't go there and say, "Oh, no way! I can't believe that, scandalous." No, like you'd say, "Well, no, no, duh, of course, it's obvious. I mean, that's what you do. Countries beside each other have free trade agreements because it's basically making a stronger country together. Europe has that all over it. Look at Brexit. The people in the United Kingdom were all like, "Oh, we hate European Union," but you'll never find one person saying. Well, you might find a couple, but most of them will overwhelmingly say, we like the trade part of the European Union. Can we stay in that and just, go out of the other thing? So that's why I don't really understand Trump's part on this. But, I mean, it is a populist support thing right now because, Americans do feel like they're being scammed by people. But, I just... It really makes me think, especially with, like, comments towards, putting tariffs on imported Chinese goods. It just... You really do think... Does it benefit all Americans to have those, jobs from, I don't know, we'll say Hershey's. That's a good example of what happened when a big company in Canada went down to Mexico. Again, that company came from the United States and went to Canada during early days of NAFTA. But, those people lose their jobs. But is that really worse or better? Like, which one is it? Than, everything you do in your life, everything. It's just more expensive. You buy silverware. You don't think about that. Next thing you know, it's double the price. Stuff like that. Can you really say that, that the small stuff don't matter? It's the big stuff, the couple thousand that need the jobs. Does that really matter?
I don't know. The only thing I want to say further on this matter is I just think this is a really stupid idea, repealing NAFTA. TPP, obviously, I don't like the idea of TPP, and I think it's a stupid idea. But NAFTA is incredibly stupid to repeal that. They're our neighbors, and they're too important of economic partners to just... If you repeal NAFTA, it's going to hurt both of them. It's going to hurt Mexico, and it's going to hurt Canada more. You're going to have to replace it with something. Essentially, you're repealing NAFTA to replace it with NAFTA.
Yeah,
And I think that's a lot to say on this topic.
Yeah, and for anyone wanting to hear more about the TPP, we'll talk about that when we're on Hillary Clinton issues, because Trump has just always said against TPP, and that's it. He hasn't really addressed it much, whereas Clinton has talked about it more. So we'll get to that in our next video. But now we can move on to how they plan to deal with ISIS. Do you want to give the summary on that?
It's just containing them. I mean, he's going to economically contain them, which they kind of already are, and they're going to try to... I mean, all he's saying is, I'm going to form an alliance against them, but the U.S. isn't going to be the primary person to go in. We're not going to go, he's saying the United States isn't going to be the only person to go in. And he's going to try to build a coalition around this, but he wants to make it clear that it's not a one-way partnership. He's not going to assist Iraq and get nothing for it. If he's going to assist Iraq with U.S. troops, he's going to get the oil from it. I think that's pretty much the way you can shorten it down to. He wants it to be a two-way partnership. If he's going to send troops or continue to bomb ISIS, he wants to gain something from it. He's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, that's kind of consistent. He said that with stuff in NATO and other, like South Korea, Japan, stuff like that. Like he's always emphasized a two-way street here, and I guess that is a fine thing. But I mean, you got to look back like a year before when all his ISIS comments were like, if I were president, if I were commander in chief, I would take them out. Just take them out. Obama obviously is a Muslim because he's not taking them out. And those comments to me, it sounds like that sounds like ground war. The United States, like not even led. Like we're talking like Iraq War kind of level of just go in there and just take them out. It sounds like that kind of rhetoric to me. I don't know about you, but I mean, someone outside of the United States, that's what I hear.
That's what I'm hearing too. It seems like he doesn't. He wants to go in. He wants to go in and defeat them and beat the crap out of them, essentially. But he doesn't want to be the one to push it. It's like he wants to go after ice cream, but he doesn't want to be the person to suggest that we go after ice cream. If that makes somewhat sense.
Yeah.
It's kind
of. But I mean, like if you look back at the situation there right now in Syria and Iraq, I mean everyone probably knows the whole backstory. Civil war, all that stuff. In Syria, and then in Iraq, it's the insurgency. It all gets boiled down, but maybe in the past 2 years, it's been getting kind of cloudy there, like what's really going on. So right now, especially with the ceasefire agreed between both sides in Syria, I know it's not really a ceasefire because, sometimes one of the two sides will do something. But essentially what's going on specifically around ISIS is you've got the Syrian army and the Free People Army, I mean both sides of the civil war. They're working together to push out ISIS because, all of Syria has deemed ISIS as being not Syrian. They're not part of us. We're going to kick them out first. That's our main priority. And that's one of the things that the United States and Russia, brokered together, were able to get that ceasefire done. You also have other nations like Iran, putting at least training. We don't know for sure, but they could be also putting troops in to fight ISIS. So a lot of these nations that are fighting ISIS are Shiite nations, nations that the United States predominantly says are the enemy. You'll just look at C-SPAN or something. You'll find at least one mention of Iran is like the devil or something like that. These are quote-unquote hostile nations to the United States. But these are the nations that have the same goals as the United States as taking out ISIS. So when Donald Trump makes his speech of we need to work with anyone who has the same view of ISIS as an enemy is our ally. That kind of thinking, to me, that looks like they're looking at making an alliance with Iran in terms of taking out stuff.
If they can make an alliance with Iran over this, if they can use this as a stepping stone to improving relations with Iran, that'd be a great thing. But this rhetoric of Iran's always the bad guy, Iran's always the enemy, needs to stop. Because the Iranian government's doing that as well. But most people in Iran don't really care about the Americans. I mean, they probably don't like us because we allowed the Iraqis to use mustard gas on them. But that's the U.S. government. They don't hate Americans, I don't believe. So I think, at least in the United States, we need to end this rhetoric of Iran's the enemy, and we need to change this to where we need to focus more on improving relations with Iran, because whether we like it or not, they are one of the predominant powers in the region. And if it's to be, they're one of the most stable countries there, even though they had a civil war 30, 40 years ago. And
well, I think
just
something like that
is happening with Trump.
Mm-hmm. It depends on how Trump takes things, because the Obama policy with the Middle East has been kind of consistent, and it sounds a lot like containment, which is exactly what Trump is proposing here. But it's got a one-sided feel to it. The Republicans especially will criticize Obama of being, Iranian leaning on things, or being their ally and stuff. But the truth is, the United States is not very good with Iran, even under the Obama term. Even though the Iranian deal has been signed, it's not been passed through. It's not been enacted. Not one step has been taken towards normalizing relationships, despite the fact that a deal was signed. And the big thing that could be hurting the United States in the Middle East now is, despite the fact that the United States, essentially took control of the Iranian government in the 60s, which led to essentially a revolution, all that stuff, and supporting the war, as you said, between Iraq and Iran. That hasn't really hurt the Iranian opinion of the United States. It's still been favorable. Iranians still say, American people, they're just like us. They just live overseas. But what is hurting them now is the fact that, this deal, despite all the rhetoric saying, oh, we will ease up sanctions, nothing's happened. So if something doesn't change within the next couple of years, you could have a situation where it's, instead of just the supreme leader hating the United States, you could actually have a whole country hating the United States again, which is not beneficial to anyone in the Middle East.
I think we both agree that the Iranian deal needs to pass in order for there to be stability in the Middle East, right?
Yes.
In some form or another. Because I do think you have a point there where the Iranians may have had neutral relationships relations with us, to say, at least by an opinion, but almost everybody in Iran will, almost everybody in Iran has to be against these sanctions. They have to want to get these lifted. It will greatly benefit the Iranian economy if it gets lifted, because ever since we put these sanctions and the embargo essentially on them, their economy has just not improved. It's just kind of stagnated there. And if we can get Iran to be more, not I want to say more powerful, but more, more
free, I would say.
Yes, that works as well. In the region, it can only lead to more peace there, essentially. Because right now, the powerful players in the region are Saudi Arabia, who has a pretty sketchy history with terrorism. Iraq is in a civil war when ISIS still there, and there's not really much there. I mean, I guess Turkey, but Erdogan is Erdogan, so who knows what he's gonna do. So the most stable power in the Middle East, whether you like it or not, is Iran. And if the U.S. can build a relationship with Iran, I think the U.S. can build a relationship with the Middle East. It can rebuild the entire relationship with the Middle East if it begins with Iran. But it has to begin with this trade deal, and it has to happen sooner or later, preferably sooner.
And to avoid going off on a tangent, like the reason why we spoke so much about Iran here was this is still Donald Trump that we're talking about. Like, yes, this is his foreign policy of how to deal with ISIS, and I do believe they do mean for it to include Iran. But with point number one of his foreign policy, getting rid of all trade deals, the Iranian deal specifically.
Yep.
This is just a major contradiction. So, I mean, there could be all this potential to fix the situation in the Middle East, like we just said, but coming from Donald Trump, it's still such a weird point because it's just such massive contradictions. So that's why it's so key, because it's like saying, my biggest advantage for being president is this, but I'll never do that.
One last final thing I want to say here about Donald Trump before we go into the last topic. He's against trade deals, but he's for good trade deals. He's against bad trade deals, and he's for good trade deals. And even though he's been against the Iran deal in the past, knowing Donald Trump, he'll probably change his opinion in the next week or so. So we really know how he's going to handle the Middle East and Iran until he actually does it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a problem, because we know how Clinton's going to handle it, and he hasn't had the best history with the Middle East, but Trump, it's a toss-up. There's just nowhere to predict him. He's so unpredictable, which he apparently wants to be unpredictable. I'm not sure why.
Well, that's the Trump foreign policy right there. But yeah, like you said, the last topic that we're going to be talking about today is immigration. Now, we don't want to narrow this down too much to a specific region because, it's foreign policy, not Middle Eastern policy. Trump's whole opinion on immigration is that legal immigration is good. We want more legal immigrants, and he's always.
I don't think he.
Well, I'm not saying that he wants legal immigration. I'm saying that he says it's good, and that could be a cover-up for the more important part, is that he says that illegal immigration is the bane of all evil, essentially, saying that it destroys the country. So we don't really know fully on what his opinion on immigration is, because we don't know the legal aspect. In the legal aspect, whether anyone likes it or not, that is bigger than the illegal spot. So, when we're talking about immigration, Donald Trump continues to put 90% of the effort on the legal side. And yes, sure, that is a problem, but it's not 90% of the issue here.
I think talking about Republicans and immigration, it's important to, for me at least, to realize that Republicans aren't against immigration. They're against unskilled immigration. The United States needs more doctors and more skilled labor. We don't need more unskilled labor. We don't need more gardeners. We don't need more factory workers. We need more, like I said, we need more doctors. We need more engineers. But the majority of the people who are immigrating to the United States don't have that. And we could put steps forward, say, to, make it easy to get into college. So we are producing more a larger percentage of our population becomes skilled labor. Therefore, it frees up jobs in the unskilled labor part. There's ways to get around it, but I think the basis of the Republican argument is we don't need more unskilled laborers. We need more skilled laborers. But most of the people who immigrated to the United States are refugees or unskilled laborers, and I think that's I think that's where it originates from. But I don't think illegal immigration's that big of a deal. I mean, there's a lot of them here, but they're all pretty much, assimilated into the population.
Yeah, and
They're too important.
I mean, there's a couple ways you can look at this. Now, as someone who has immigrated to another country, I can say straight up that, I like the Republican side of immigration. I'm not too much on the illegal side, but I don't agree with illegal immigration. It's illegal for a reason, and I like following laws. But I do believe that if you're going to immigrate to another country, you should at least be helpful to that country. No, I don't think it matters too much about the country you're leaving. Although if you're a skilled laborer, then that does kind of hurt that country. But if you're going to another country, at least be useful and productive. So I can agree with the Republican side. I can understand why they don't want more poor families in the United States. But a lot of the arguments that the Republican side is making, to me, they're just kind of odd. Because they talk about, illegal immigration coming in and then, possibly messing with votes or taking a lot of welfare and all that stuff. But, the key thing about illegal immigration is that it's undocumented. They're only really taking jobs. And, I mean, we don't even know how many illegal immigrants have those jobs that they're taking up. How many are just sitting in homes, like, with their so-and-so, the so-called spouse, who legally not married, of course, but, just like a stay-at-home kind of person. The good example is a skilled worker comes over to the United States, works, and brings 13 family members with them, even though they're all unskilled and they're all illegal. How much is the actual economic impact? And while I don't think it's an easy answer to get, you may never get that answer, I don't think it's the same, huge menace as the Republicans are making it out to be.
I think you have a good point there. I think the Republicans are trying to make illegal immigration a bigger deal than it actually is. But another point is legal immigration to the United States is too hard for too many people. People who assist translators, for example, in the United States. For the United States Armed Forces in, say, Iraq and Afghanistan, went over there. Having that intelligence is incredibly important, but they get stuck over there because they get their applications just get stuck in our. I hate to use a term, but it is bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. So it comes to a problem of it's too hard for too many people, and it's too easy for too many people. The entire system, all of immigration, is just begging for reform, but in such a partisan Congress and political system that we have lately. I just don't think it's going to happen unless one party has a supermajority. They just need to overwhelmingly have control over both the Senate and the House. And I just don't see that happening in 2016. The Senate's going to come down to 1 or 2 seats, probably going to have the 51, 52 seat majority, probably for the Republicans, but who knows? It's such a toss-up. And I think that one party needs to either go to the other and say, we need to work on this, or one party needs to have a supermajority. Because the only way that's going to happen.
Now, specifically getting to Trump's policy on banning immigration. Now, he does want to ban immigration from quote unquote all Muslim nations or all terrorist nations. Now, um, there's a big difference here because when you talk about terrorist nations, there's a list of about 11 nations in particular. So, stuff like Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Algeria, Egypt. These areas here, you can search up online, so we don't have a link. But pretty much every country in the world has restrictions for these terrorist-sponsored countries. Now, you can argue the fact that this list was pretty much made up by the United States, so it could be biased. But when it comes down to shutting the immigration from those countries off, that's a lot easier to do, and it's not so much unfair, but I mean, I would argue that you should still have legal ways of people in that system through more screening to get through. However, Donald Trump's comments are that, all Muslim nations should be banned. But, what does that really mean? Because, I mean, if you look at all Muslim nations, what percentage is a Muslim nation? Is it when they break 50% Muslim? Is it even 30%, like a small majority? Not so much majority, but like a leading minority in a very diverse country. Is Indonesia, a country that is very far from the Middle East, is that one of your Muslim nations with, Sharia law people running all over the place? What is the definition here? But, I mean, from what I've seen from Donald Trump, everything is Muslim, so we don't want it.
It's legal. It's against the Constitution, and it's illegal to specifically ban Muslims. And no Republican. Republicans are for it. Some, but very, very few are for banning just Muslims. I don't even know how you would do it, because I mean, Ted Cruz says something along the lines of, "We should only let Christians in from these nations." But how do you know? Reporter then asked him, "How do you know that who are Christian, who's not?" Ted Cruz replied, "You just kind of know." And
I'd like to clarify that was Jeb Bush.
That was Jeb Bush?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Same point, though. You can't restrict the certain religious people from entering the country because it's against the U.S. Constitution, and there's no definitive way to tell. There's no definitive way I could tell if, say, Akab was a Buddhist, and I don't know if he's a Christian. There's no definitive way for me to tell from a political point of view. There's just no way. And I think that's going to be one of the first problems he's going to find. If he wants to make a Muslim ban, he needs to have a clear and definitive way to identify them if he's going to ban them.
Yeah, and that just brings up more murky water stuff. I mean, if we're talking about banning countries on this quote-unquote terrorist list, if you ban people in Pakistan, there are still small minorities of Christians in Pakistan. Are you banning them too? So Donald Trump's quotes are, very vague on that because it sounds like, they'll allow Christians into the country. But if it's from a nation that clearly, the United States has expressed a lot of interest in banning, passing laws in Congress saying that restrictions are going to be put in place for those 11 nations, where does the lines get drawn? Is that at religion or is that country?
I don't know. I think it's something we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yep.
Because knowing Donald Trump, it's probably going to change in about a week. But I think that's all I have for that topic.
Yep. So thank everyone for listening to this, because, I mean, you're probably just staring at a picture of Donald Trump. We appreciate if you like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff helps our channel out. We will be talking maybe next week or so about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy things. Gonna be very long because, Secretary of State and a lot of things to talk about.
Oh, yeah. What a mess.
Yeah. But,
sorry, spoiler alert.
A little bit. Anyway, everyone, take care.
See you next time.